It is Friday, March 1st. Let's talk PlayStation. Before we get into our news stories, I want to mention real quick, my next video game documentary is finally going to be ready this coming Tuesday, 10 a.m. EST. Well, it's almost done. I'm like 95% sure that I'll be able to upload it in time, and the very fact that I'm mentioning it means it'll motivate me to make sure that it's ready in time. But it's finally ready. The last one was our PS3 versus 360 coverage. That was back in December. That's how long it took for me to find the time to finally work on another one here, because I'm a one-man show and those documentaries do take a long time to make, as I've often told you, but I want to show you a little sneak peek about what it is, so take a look.
Users of Sony's PlayStation Network have been greeted instead by error messages.
Now what's being called one of the largest digital data breaches in history.
That Sony suffered an external intrusion, which forced their online network to shut down.
Yeah, Sony says the personal information of about 75 million players may have been stolen.
Of up to 77 million users worldwide. So what does that mean for anyone who may have been exposed?
That's right, we were going to be covering the 2011 PlayStation Network outage, because that was really crazy at the time when you think about it. And so in that documentary, we're going to go a little in-depth about what happened, why it happened, how Sony handled the situation, the entire timeline of the events. That was a really crazy time, and so that's what we're going to take a look at this coming Tuesday, 10 a.m. EST. And as I often ask when it comes to these big videos that take me a long time to make, I'd really appreciate it if some of you guys could help your boy out a little bit, share it around, post it to a forum, send it to a friend or something. Obviously, like and share and all that stuff. It would really help me out. It always makes me a little nervous when I take that long to make a video, and you just don't know what's going to happen with YouTube's algorithm, so thank you very much. Now we'll get into our first news story, which is about PlayStation Plus. If you remember, we're kind of waiting for March's games because it's going to be dropping off PS3 and Vita games, and we were kind of hoping that maybe we'd get more PS4 games, or perhaps the quality of the titles would go up. Well, we know it's going to be Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered and The Witness, and The Witness being that very long-form puzzle game from Jonathan Blow. He made Braid, and then this was kind of his follow-up game. It was actually there during the PS4 reveal, and both these games very well received. I mean, Call of Duty Modern Warfare, we all love that game, whether you hate Call of Duty or not. That was like the one game that most people played back in the day, and but a lot of people probably have that game. And The Witness might be the one standout title where if you don't have it, it's certainly a title that you want to explore. You do still have until March 8th to download the PS3 and Vita games from last month, but I'm seeing a pretty good divide between where people sit on this, because obviously you're not getting more than 2 PlayStation 4 games, but you could certainly argue that the quality went way up. I mean, these are 2 very big titles, very well received titles, so it's a good start. I think we'll have to wait and see what April looks like, but for now, these are 2 very good games. You really can't complain unless you're just in a really tough spot where you've already purchased both these games, but it bodes well, so hopefully April looks a little bit better. Now we're going to try and cover this one a little bit quickly, because this came out right after Let's Talk PlayStation last week. This has been happening a lot lately, where I upload Friday and then something big breaks out, but I wasn't too concerned because this is kind of the same thing. Basically, another patent has been published from Sony about backwards compatibility. Now, this one's a little bit different, but it's essentially the same patent. They kind of go hand in hand with the one that we talked about a few weeks back. But this is the patent regarding backwards compatibility, and it's titled Simulation of Legacy Bus Operation for Backwards Compatibility. And the previous one was more so about CPU ID impersonating. This patent is for emulating the bus operation of the device that the legacy application was designed for. And it could possibly adjust the bus performance as well, which is of course a very real possibility, given that emulating older software allows for increased performance in terms of either resolution, frame rate, texture detail can be slightly improved. Now I do want to be fair and say that this doesn't really guarantee anything, but when you do have 2 patents published recently with 2 different methods of emulation, well really it's one method of emulation, but these 2 different scenarios are encompassed into the main method they're trying to achieve. Mark Cerny being the inventor, I mean, this is boding pretty well for us maybe seeing this on PlayStation 5, because we all are expecting PS5 to play PS4. I mean, that's kind of a given. It would be severely disappointing if that wasn't there, but I think Sony really is trying to make PlayStation 5 this be-all, end-all piece of PlayStation hardware that can let you play all these older games and all these older discs, and that would be fantastic if that really was the case. It really would, and I think that would be that would be a huge send-off for the platform once it comes out. at some point in 2020. But without getting too crazy, we'll just leave it right there. Into our next news story, Managing Director for Guerrilla Games Herman Hulse posted on the PlayStation blog that Horizon Zero Dawn is having its second anniversary of being on the market because it did come out 2 years ago, 2017 in February, and it has sold 10 million copies, which is fantastic. I mean, that's a lot of copies. So great news for a good Sony IP like that. I mean, we all enjoyed Horizon Zero Dawn. It's no doubt getting a sequel. It just like really solidifies that this franchise is certainly not going anywhere. When you've got a 10 million plus seller, you can guarantee that we're going to see not only a second game, but probably a third and a fourth. Guerrilla Games is expanding to be two-team developer. They're going to have a staff of upwards of 400 people. They're moving into new studio space in 2019. It's going to be a big year for them for sure. And I can't wait to see what that second project is that's not Horizon Zero Dawn 2, because as much as we would love to see that game, I want to know what that other one is. The secret project that could very well be another Killzone, or it could be a new IP entirely based on some of those recent hires they've done, which are first-person shooter specialists. Now, this is a very simple news story, and I believe we touched on this not too long ago, but looks like we may actually be getting a Demon's Souls remaster based on what transpired over at the Reset Era forum. So over on the forum, somebody posted a new thread asking, do you think we'll get a Demon's Souls remaster? And in a few posts, Kotaku's Jason Schreier basically said, yes, that's it. Didn't say anything else, just said yes. Now, Jason Schreier, of course, very well respected in the games industry. I mean, he has tons of connections. He's always broke major stories. I mean, he's a very well-trusted individual. And so to hear him say that makes you think, did he just leak that? No, I don't think Jason would certainly do something as irresponsible as that, certainly, but I think we've got a few rumors regarding it right now, and obviously From Software is very interested in it being revisited at some point by another developer or something, because obviously it's Sony's IP, so it's not in their ball court to make that decision. Sony has to pursue it, and I think it would be crazy if Sony didn't pursue something like this. So it just seems like there's been a lot of discussion going on about Demon's Souls recently, and so it seems like it might actually finally be happening. And I really hope it does, because this game does need to get remastered and just put on PlayStation 4, and for good reason. So many people bought Bloodborne without ever trying a Souls game, just on the inherent fact that it was a PlayStation exclusive. And now Demon's Souls will inherently still be PlayStation exclusive because it's owned by Sony, so it would be within their best interest to certainly try and put this game on PS4. Speaking of exclusive games, that takes us nicely into our next news story about Supermassive Games. They have a new trademark for something called House of Ashes. Now, currently Supermassive has this Dark Pictures anthology that they're working on, which is this moniker that will release a number of different games under that. And they're smaller scale, but they're still very much so like Until Dawn, where they're choose your own adventure kind of deals, and people could die or live based on the decisions of the player. Very cool stuff. That's why we love Supermassive. But the Dark Pictures anthology will be multi-platform. It will be available on PC, Xbox One, and PS4. They have mentioned recently, though, that they will still be doing PlayStation exclusives, and they actually have unannounced PlayStation exclusives being worked on. So is House of Ashes either under the Dark Pictures anthology, or will it be a PlayStation exclusive of some sort? That we do not know. The only other thing we really do know is that the PlayStation exclusive stuff that they have been doing has been PlayStation VR stuff. And so, in theory, whatever they do that is exclusive to Sony, I'm assuming it might be a smaller VR title. But if we see House of Ashes, it may very well be that PlayStation exclusive that we're talking about, because as of right now, the first entry for the Dark Pictures anthology, Man of Medan, that still isn't out yet. That's due sometime this year, but I can't imagine that they'd maybe have a trademark get published this early for the next entry after Man of Medan. So who knows, we'll find out once we get an official reveal or a confirmation. Next up, Wish Studios is closing. Now you might be wondering, who is Wish Studios and why should I care? Here's why you don't know who Wish Studios is, because they made That's You and Knowledge is Power for the PlayStation 4, and those are PlayLink games. PlayLink being the initiative that Sony has been trying to do for a while now, where these are social games, basically. These are games that don't require a DualShock 4. You download an app on your smartphone, and you play the game that way. They're party games, more or less. That's what That's You was. I haven't seen much of Knowledge is Power, but it's essentially the same thing. It's a PlayLink game. And on PS4 box art for these games, it'll say underneath the regular PS4 branding that this is a PlayLink title. Last year, I had made a prediction that nobody's going to care about PlayLink, and Sony's not even going to care about it, really. And sure enough, that's like kind of the situation here, right? Because the reason why the reason why this studio is closing is because apparently they can't find a publisher for their next title. Now, if they just recently developed 2 PlayLink titles and now they're doing some other project, and I would assume it's probably within the same veins of a party game of some sort, you'd have to imagine that they've talked to Sony, or they've tried to talk to many publishers for that matter, and nobody has picked them up, and that's why they are unfortunately having to close down. And it's unfortunate, sure. But the point is, I mean, nobody cares about these games. Clearly, they're not doing all that well. And it's to the point where Sony's not even throwing these guys a lifeline to publish their next game or even give them a little bit of funding or what have you, because they can't find anything. They can't find a publisher and they can't find investments. That's why they're closing down. It's sad, sure, but just goes to show that games like these, you know, when Sony tries to do some sort of oddball thing where they just try to catch this particular part of the market where it's more casual, and it's not working. Now, this next one is potentially a very big deal, depending on if it's true or not, but there is a new report going around from this past week that Microsoft will reveal next-gen hardware at E3 2019. Now, we know Sony isn't going to be at E3 2019, but this could certainly set the precipice for next-gen hardware, and certainly this would mean that Microsoft's going first, because there is no indication whatsoever that Sony will be revealing PlayStation 5 anytime soon. In fact, I personally think that it will be some point in the later half of 2019 and not necessarily at the midpoint, which is certainly what Microsoft would be aiming for at this point if this does turn out to be true. And it's not totally outside the realms of impossibility, because actually Microsoft mentioned next-gen hardware last year. Now, it was a very offhanded, subtle comment from Phil Spencer when he was on stage. He more or less just said, yes, we're working on a next-gen streaming service. Yes, we're working on the next-generation Xbox. And it was right at the end of the show. Very small comment, very subtle, no big deal. So certainly there's going to be something here at this show, and it's certainly within their best interest probably to talk about it in some way, shape, or form at great length. But the report is saying that it won't be anything super crazy. The report is saying we won't get any product names, certainly not pricing, but basically a reveal of the rumor that we currently know, which is that it's a family of codenamed Xbox Scarlet consoles, and underneath that umbrella name, it would be Lockhart and Anaconda. Lockhart being a streaming box, basically, discless, but you know, still very much so in the $150, $200 range possibly, plays the base mode of all those games, and then Anaconda being a more souped-up Xbox that accepts discs, and that's a more traditional console. So that's kind of what we know right now, and so Microsoft will probably show off both machines and discuss a little bit about their plans for next gen, stuff like that. And certainly if they were to do something like that, that's very much them going first. They're setting the stage more or less, the laying out the groundwork for the very start of next gen conversations in official capacity, mind you, because once we actually see them, it's official, like it's on, you know what I mean? And so it's really just a matter of if Microsoft goes first, and I'm very convinced at this point that Microsoft will go first, and we will more than likely definitely see something at E3 2019 from them, because they have to show it. They have to show it for one big reason. Sony's not going to be there. This is their time. The other reason being that, well, they don't sell nearly as many Xbox Ones as Sony does PlayStation 4s. And, you know, yes, I understand the irony in the fact that the recent conversations we've been having about Microsoft is that while they are, in fact, very committed to the games industry by buying up all these developers, you know, increasing their suite of studios and bolstering all these services that they have, that seems like to the point where they're making Xbox irrelevant, because all these services are being put everywhere, not just on the Xbox brand. They want people to log into Xbox Live on every, you know, device that you could possibly think of, and inherently people are kind of getting it into the fact of like, well, Microsoft's a software company at the end of the day. That's why they want to put it everywhere. And I can certainly see that, and it does make a lot of sense. I mean, that's what Microsoft wants. They want you to buy their services, their subscriptions. They want you to pay them monthly instead of just buying hardware one time and then generating revenue through software sales. If they can get you into a subscription service, you know, they've already got a plentiful amount of money based on how well subscription services do in our day and age. So, you know, certainly Microsoft is going to want to do something like that at E3, because not only that, the attention's all on them. You know, E3 is going to be pretty bare bones. I mean, you've got a lot of publishers that are, you know, either not trying to be a part of the show as much, but also Sony's not going to be there. And if you don't know, Sony actually buys a massive amount of floor space, massive. every year Sony's always got the largest floor plan there. And so that's what's going to be really interesting about E3 this year, is that, how much space is Microsoft going to buy? I would hope they would buy a lot, certainly, especially if they're going to have, display cases with, display models of these machines and what have you. So, it's certainly going to be a big deal if they were to, if this does turn out to be true. It has to be true, because they already talked about it last year. There's just been nothing but this somewhat negative buzz going around with Microsoft. I mean, they just launched Crackdown 3, and that was reviewing poorly. So it's like, that's another game that just was in development hell for so long, and what good did it really do for the game? You've got all these recent stories about Xbox head Phil Spencer actually discussing how their recent acquisitions is very much so about bolstering those subscription services that they do have. And if we know that we're going to be able to play those games on something as simple as a PC or a phone, maybe even Nintendo Switch, based on that rumor that we talked about not long ago, I mean, it's wild. Microsoft's going for this really all-out strategy. But they still very much so care about the Xbox brand. I mean, if they're going to be releasing 2 machines, certainly they care about still selling actual hardware to the consumer. They also have a physical to digital sort of service that might be offered with next generation Xbox, and that the next generation Xbox will very much play every single piece of Xbox hardware prior, assuming that it was approved to be on the backwards compatibility list. So they've got a lot of stuff going on. They've got their hands in so many different jars, but I don't want the company to be in a place where they're trying to throw all these things at the wall to see what sticks. I hope they've got a clear path, because right now it doesn't seem like that's very much the case. Whereas with Sony, we don't really know much about PlayStation 5. We have a bunch of substantiated rumors, but at this point it very much seems like Microsoft's closer to showing off hardware than Sony. And Sony doesn't have to show off that hardware anytime soon because PS4 is doing so well. But Sony does have this path that does appear more straightforward. I don't know if it's necessarily clear or the right path, but it's a forward path in the sense of it's going to be, PS5 is going to be basic hardware more or less. It's just going to be a very powerful PlayStation. It could potentially play older PlayStation games. It will very much so have a version 2 of PlayStation VR. We know PlayStation Now is not going anywhere, and they're certainly going to try to bolster that even further. But, that's pretty much it. We really have to wait and see with Sony. We may be in a place where we'll have to wait even longer to find out what Sony's doing. But I will tell you this, you won't have to wait any longer for Let's Talk Plus, our weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway, where one of you can win a $10 PSN code. I would like to congratulate Pillow Talk 5H. You have won this week's $10 PSN code. I'll be contacting you on Twitter very soon. If you would like to win a $10 PlayStation Network code, it is so easy. Follow the link down below to the Gleam website. You can subscribe to the channel. You can follow on Twitter. You can follow on Twitch. All of those are entries to win a $10 PSN code. We do this every single week on Let's Talk PlayStation. Let me pay for your games. Those are all the news stories I wanted to talk about with you guys from this past week. Now, if you didn't see, on Tuesday we talked about 20 PlayStation exclusives that you might not know about. You probably don't know about. I guarantee you. None of you know all 20 of those games. Very weird games. Some of them I didn't know about either when I was kind of doing a little bit of research for that video. Very oddball titles. You definitely want to go check that out and learn about. And these are IP that Sony owns, by the way. Every game in that video, potentially if Sony wanted to, they could do sequels, remasters, whatever they want. Which almost frightens me based on some of those games in there. But go check that out if you didn't see. Also, this is Let's Talk PlayStation 350. I didn't do anything special, certainly. We usually do that every 100 episodes, but 350, there you go. Kind of a cool, nice little round number. I got nothing for you, though. Actually, no, I have the documentary coming for you on Tuesday. That's what I got for you. And which is great, because now I get to tell you once again, I get to remind you once again, help me out when that video comes out. Man, this video also, once again, took a long time. I'm sorry they take so long. I'm trying to be in a spot where I can get a little bit of a faster turnover with those videos, because so many of you guys enjoy those more in-depth documentary-style videos. But this Tuesday, 10 a.m. EST. I'm quite certain it'll be ready. Quite certain. But there you go. That's all I've got for you, more or less. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Badecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.